All right, good morning. I am recording. Today is Monday, the 30th of January, day number 13 for our class. And as it says right there, I got some emails this weekend that people were having problems, especially for uh, chapter 6 for the multi-column format for the shape up. So I'm going to go over three things today. All right. Most people did extremely well on the test that we gave last week. And looking back on it, the instruction pretty bad. All right. So I'm going to show you what I did. And if you did not get 100% on the test, and you know who you are if you did not, then what I will do is I'm going to send you today a copy of the test page, and it'll be annotated where I took off. Now, if you don't get one, you got 100%, and so there was nothing to take off, so I'm not going to send that out to you. All right. I want to let you know what's going on this week. All right. Today, as I mentioned, I'm going to start by very quickly going over the test. All right. After we go over the test, we'll go over the Halloween example for chapter 6, where you have to make it into a 2-column format. Then we will go over the shape up for chapter 6, where you have to make it a 3-column format. I've decided to extend the due date. All right. So instead of this being due yesterday, I'm going to make it due by midnight tomorrow with no late penalty. Now, if you've already turned it in, it's not a problem. Okay. And I will be grading everything. I like to grade everything once I've got it all in. All right. So again, tomorrow we're going to go over chapter 9. Now, chapter 9 it's different. Chapters 9 and 10 are all almost totally just CSS. But tomorrow we'll talk about Flexbox. All right. And we'll go over examples of using Flexbox. It's not a particularly long chapter, and I'm not even going to say that it's complex. It's just different. I mean, I put in here it's the most complex thing we've gone over thus far, and it probably is. All right. And so we'll go over some examples as well. As of right now, what I plan on doing is giving you a pretest for chapter 9 on Wednesday and handing it out on Wednesday and then doing it with you, for you, however you want to look at that, on Thursday. All right. That's what I'm looking at doing right now. Okay. And Friday again will be our lab. So someday next week, I don't know. Let's just see how it goes this week. I don't know if it'll be Monday. I don't know if it'll be Tuesday. But your next test will be on chapters 7, 8, and 9. Now, I don't want to let that throw you too much. And what I mean is, um, from chapter 7 in our book, let me just quickly bring this up here. Believe me, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but on chapter 7 in the book, and let me bring up Red Shelf here. All right. Like I said, the next test then will be on 7, 8, and 9, and very quickly, and we'll talk about this before then, okay? But on um, chapter 7, I mean, it'll be expected by then you'll know how to create an ordered list, an unordered list, that you'll be able to link to pay to something on the page you're on or whatever. You'll be able to use fairly simplistic um, media queries for responsive design. All right. And then also it'll be on Flexbox. All right. Then next week, let's just suppose right now we have the test on Monday. Then next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to go over chapter 10. and that'll be on grid layout, which is another way to lay out a web page. All right. And then the following week, we have a test, and it would basically be then on 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right. But don't worry about it right now, is what I'm saying. All right. So with all that said, let's jump in and take a look. Now, this was your test. All right. And when I started to write the key for it, which I write the key first, I didn't here, so I'll blame myself for that. But when I started to write the key, I realized a lot of it didn't make a whole lot of sense. All right, but I'm going to show you quickly what I did. And, there's several people, yours probably looks better than mine, and that's totally okay. All right, so that's the way that mine looks. All right, so up on here, you were supposed to basically have an H1. You were supposed to have a link here to the menu, a link here to Google Maps, and I also provided a link down here. Well, I thought I did. Maybe I didn't hook it up to the footer. All right. And then over here, we were supposed to have a tell link. And again, this has got to be looked at on a machine where you're able to make a phone call. All right. And my computer is not set up like that. And then we had a geo link as well. All right. And you were supposed to follow the instructions. Now, nobody did the gradient, so I didn't take off for it, but I wanted to show it to you. But on here, this doesn't look terrible right now. You can see that I floated, and right now it's at 100%. All right. And, when you start taking a look at it, notice how it falls apart when you make it go, smaller. This looks okay. This looks okay. The floats just look terrible. And that's being kind. All right. Well, what you're going to discover when we get into talking about Flexbox is you'll see that, for lack of better verbiage, you won't have the need to use floats ever again. All right. And most people find them a pain in the butt. Now, when I say that you'll never have to use floats again, if you were to go to work for a company and you were to be doing some web work, there's at least a chance that maybe they've already got a website set up and they've done some floats. All right. I mean, you could always volunteer then to convert it over to Flexbox or convert it over to CSS Grid. All right. But, and maybe I've told you guys about this before. I'll always remember when I got my first programming job. All right. Um, I'd been there a couple months. I didn't write a line of code. They had me going to meetings and learning about different things. So finally I was given this thing, and the boss told me, he said, I've got about 500 lines of code here, and there are 7 errors in here. We'd like them fixed. So I spent a couple days. A couple of the errors were kind of difficult, but I got it all working. And then I said to him, there's about 50 or 60 warnings in here. Do you want me to work on those as well? And he said, is it stopping the program from working correctly? And I said, no. And he goes, then leave it the heck alone. All right. And all I'm trying to say here, with the kind of analogy that I'm making is, if you go to work for a company and you think you've got a better way of doing things, first of all, don't walk in the door with that kind of an attitude, or don't walk into an interview with that kind of an attitude. Like, you've got a big S on your chest for Superman or Superwoman or whatever. All right. But, after you've made a name for yourself, maybe you want to recommend something like that. So let me just show you. All right. In fact, I'll just right mouse click on here and I will view the page source. And like I said, some of yours were better than mine, which is totally fine. All right. So taking it from the top, what did I look for? Well, again, you were supposed to make an H1 or something with the name of the place on there. You'll notice I put all this stuff inside of header. Okay. And I put a comment either above it or below it with all that stuff was. So the name of the restaurant, okay, was there. The link to it, which was here. You were supposed to make sure, and everybody did a good job, as far as I remember, of using the target equals underscore blank, because you wanted to open it up in a new link. All right. And then give the header a solid background with a 1 pixel border and set the text to a contrasting color. So if I bring that up, One thing I do want you to get used to, and it does what I'm about to say doesn't make your program run any better, doesn't make it run any faster or anything else. But what I'm trying to teach you in here, and I think most of you are doing, is when you were writing your CSS, write it from the top down, just like you would typically write your HTML. So you'll notice that what's up here is my header stuff. And then I go to what I call top of page, then the menu, all right, and then the gradient, and then the footer. All right, so like I said, hopefully that at least makes some sense to everybody. All right, so setting that up, again, I'm hoping on here, most of the stuff makes sense. You were asked to put a border around it. All right, I used a background color that was light, a color that was dark. You can do this. If you notice on here, I changed the width and I made the width 25%. If you don't, this was inside of a div. If you don't make the width a different size, it takes up 100% of the screen, which is okay, but I didn't really want to do that, to be honest with you. All right. Then I put the margin auto in there. What did that do? That's thing on the page. And then I put cursor pointer, which we haven't talked about yet. But again, if you take a look at the way that mine looks, oops, I guess it's over here. All right, what you'll notice on here, all right, 20, there's the 25%. So there's one that's 100%. All right, so I made it 25% there. All right, and and the cursor pointer, couldn't remember what that was. Notice when I put my mouse over something which is a link, it changes to a pointer. You don't have to do that. A little nicer to look at it. It's a little more intuitive, I believe, for most people to look at that as well. All right. Okay. So what came next? So that was pretty much everything that's in the header section. Then inside of main here, it was broken up into several sections. As it said, it was a div with 100% page width. This should have been made much bigger than 20% view height. All right. Apply a related background image to the section. Okay. Set the text color again to a contrasting section. So if you had a light image, make it dark text. If you had a dark image, make it light text. Again, put the name of the restaurant there in an H1 tag. Add the phone number using a tel link. Add a geo link. And again, one thing that happened during the test is I had more than one person contact me saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Whatever this was. Well, you know, Google is your friend. So if you don't know how to do a tel link, I would start by putting in W3 schools tel link example. All right. etc. You can just pick out just about any of this stuff. All right. Okay. So again, that was everything that was in here. And I'm not even going to say, hey, this way I did this was the best way. I didn't spend much time on this. All right. And again, like I said, it's not going to actually make the telephone call, etc. Unless if you did it on your phone, it should actually show then. All right. You might be able to make it from there. All right. Then the menu. Now I cheated here, but all of you thankfully did it the right way. I just grabbed some text and put it in there. But you were supposed to float, all right, everything around the image. Again, people would contact me. I don't know how to do that. W3 schools float. That's what I did. And I basically used their example. All right. So each entree should have included a name, should have included a description, should have included a price, etc. All right. And Then you were supposed to do the gradient. Well, I gave everybody credit for this because that should have been a separate thing. Because putting a gradient in here, it's like, why would you do that when you were applying a different background color to everything? That was just a stupid thing to ask for, to be honest with you. All right. I took a test that was given last semester and I amended it, and I did not do a good enough job of reading through it. Now, when you take a look on here, just so you know, I mean, I literally just went out to Google Images and I literally put in there um, Chinese food and picked it out from there. What some of you did, which was fine, was you went and grabbed the pictures that were on the menu. All right. You grabbed the pictures that were on the menu from uh, the restaurant itself. Now, if you did that, it's not even impossible, but it's very hard to then change the background color. So your background colors were all the same. I did not take off for that. Like I said, that was on me for not writing a very good test. All right, doing that, but I do. All right, then the map. And again, I was very impressed with the fact that people were able to follow those instructions, right? And, you know, put a map in there. The copyright line, again, that was not written well. Okay, but it should have been fairly simplistic. In other words, I was looking for just pretty much something like this right there. All right. And I should mention, because like I said, I did it, but most people didn't. With that gradient that you were asked to do, I just literally W3 schools gradient and I used their example. All right. And I did go and I validated everybody's pages. Right. And there were a couple people that on this 5 points at the end, where it said 5 points will be given or deducted based on how professional the page looks. I mean, if you didn't have, what a couple people did, for example, was on here, their pictures were all over the place. In other words, they did everything right, but this whole thing was fine. Then this one was moved over, so it started here. The next one started here, etc. So you had problems with some of the stuff that you did. And if that was the case, I did take off. All right. And that was where I took off. Okay. So, like I said, if you did not get 100%, right, if you did not get 100%, you should be able to go back then and take a look at it. And I think you already know this, but just in case you don't, when you go out to Inside Rankin, you should have a link to this class. And on that link to this class, there should be a thing in there for your grade book. So you should be able to tell at any time what your grade is for the class. All right. Now, that's it for here. Well, I should say that there was also the, adding the map here and then the footer at the bottom. Okay. So I'm going to go on and jump right into going over the examples for chapter 5 and for chapter 6. All right. And what I mean is, I guess they're both for chapter 6, but I want to do first the Halloween one for chapter 6, and then I want to do for chapter 6 the shape up one. So very quickly,
Professor.
yes,
Um, on the test, if you wouldn't mind, I had just a question real
sure,
fast.
sure.
Um, so I on mine, I had a lot of troubles with like I guess the width of the page, and now that I got as I emailed you yesterday, I got a new computer, and my whole entire page looks different than what it did on
Hmm.
my other computer, and I think it has something to do with how I'm doing the widths of everything. Because like my menu items, for example, they on my other computer they were pushed all the way, screen to screen,
Right.
and now they're one's half of the page, one's a quarter of the page, and then like my map was centered, which that was not easy, and now it's not centered on
Yeah.
now. So I like, how would you go about really getting the width of your things to just be screen to screen on if you were to pull it up on your side or a different computer were to pull it up.
Well, one thing that you can do is you can go and you can set the max width. All right,
Okay.
you can set it to a certain number of pixels. All right, and typically that's what you do. But I want to show you something because it's sort of lead into what we'll be doing tomorrow, and that is this. All right, but I'm answering your question, but maybe not, kind of in a roundabout way. So this is what we're going to be working on. All right, and when you look at this, okay, watch what happens, and it's not like oh gee whiz, but notice when it gets smaller. Watch what'll happen up here. You can see how that size changes. All right, and you can see how everything starts to stack. Now, can you do this without Flexbox or CSS Grid? So in other words, can you do this stuff with just what we've learned so far? The answer is yes. All right, but you probably wouldn't want to. So what I'm
Okay.
telling you is we'll be working more with widths, but a lot of it will be, as we get into talking about chapters 8 and 9, it'll become more automated as far as how things get set up. And ideally, at least, all right, to answer the rest of your question, um, yeah, what you can do is, typically what you're going to end up doing also is again, I don't know if you ran the normalize file on yours. All right. I'm not saying you did, or I'm not saying you didn't. But again, one of the reasons that people oftentimes run the normalize file first, or that Eric Meyer CSS reset that I showed you, is it turns off margin, it turns off padding, so that you in your CSS and then also in your media queries in your CSS, you've got total control. All right. Now, when we talk tomorrow and we look at Flexbox, all right, one of the things, just so you're aware of this, that's actually fairly difficult to do, and I didn't do it on mine. Come on, open up, would you? There you go. And that is, if you want to take something, let's just say we had this. Just let's say that all that was here, we've got this right here. And let's pretend all we had in here was Great Wall. That was it. We don't have a tel link. We don't have a geo link. And we want to center that so it's right here in the middle of the page, always. That's actually pretty hard to do. There's a lot of CSS typically you have to write to do that. What you'll start to learn tomorrow is to do that and to use what's called Flexbox. It's about 2 or 3 lines of CSS. So again, if you just kind of bear with me through tomorrow and through next week, I think you're going to find a much better way of doing this. All right. So
All
with
right.
that
Thank you.
said, sure. So with that said, let's take a look. So what we want to do here are 2 different things. All right. First of all, what we're going to do now is we're going to take this Halloween store that looks like this right now. All right. This is the way it looked in chapter 5. Okay. And I'm not going to run through any of that. I'm just going to start with that, and then we're going to make a 2-column layout. So what are we changing here? All right. It's pretty obvious. I think what we're changing here is we're adding this. This is a second column. All right. What you again tomorrow with some of these examples is I'm going to write something that it's going to look terrible on the screen. All right. I'm going to write basically a main area like this, and then I'm going to write an aside and an aside. And I want one aside to go over here, and I want the other aside to go over there, and it won't do it. Now, again, I could do that with straight CSS, but it's such a pain. And again, what you'll find is we'll be able to do that with Flexbox with about 3 or 4 lines of CSS. All right, so we've got this, and now that's what we're starting with. Oops. So we were starting with this, and then literally I'm grabbing my answer key for chapter 5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it for chapter 6. All right, so let's see what it says here. It says you'll enhance the formatting so it uses a 2-column layout. You'll also add some additional content to the page. When you're through, it should look like this. Now, what I'm hoping for, and you're going to get lab time this week, but what I'm hoping for is by Sunday of this week, you will have this stuff done for not just for 6, but for 7, 8, and 9 as well. All right, so let's go jump into here. So this is again what we want. So let's take a look. You'll notice there aren't many specs. Move the unordered list to a sidebar that's floated to the left of the remaining content, which should be coded in a section. So we're taking what was here, these product categories. Remember, this is a 1-column format, and we're moving it over to here, making it a 2-column format. The width of the sidebar should be 160 pixels. Be sure to clear the footer so that it's not displayed below the list. All right. Okay, so what's left? Adjust the margins and padding for the sidebar and for this section is necessary. As it says, because the unordered list is given some padding by default, you don't need to apply any additional margin or padding to it. Next, modify the HTML for the first heading in the section so that it's displayed on 2 lines. All right, I think they mean the one here. It could mean the one here, but I think it's here, but we'll look at it anyway. Finally, modify the second heading as shown. Then add the image, cat1.jpg, and the link below the heading. All right, so there and there. Now, just so you know, and you probably have figured this out if you've worked on this problem at all, and that is none of these links work. They're not going anywhere right now. If you press on any of these, or if you press on this one, you're going to get error. That's okay. We're building this thing very incrementally. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, and I've got this Halloween class, and what's in it right now is chapter 5. So just so you see, as the saying goes, nothing up my sleeve. There's what it looks like now. I do have the bat's background in there, but that's fine. That's no biggie one way or the other. All right, we can take a look at all that in just a moment. All right, and you already know where we want to go. You've already been shown that. All right, but to start with, I'm going to take my entire chapter 5 folder and I'm going to make a copy. And of course, it's called CH05 copy by default. Oops, not VH, sorry. All right, so that'll be CH06. All right, so again, if I bring that thing up right now, I've already mentioned this, looks exactly like the one looked for chapter 5. All right, so let's go in and let's take a look at the CSS to begin with. All right, we won't worry about adding that, the HTML. We'll do all that. You always have your choice as a developer. All right, and what I mean is you can go in and you can add the HTML and then put in the CSS. You can start with the CSS, then add the HTML, or you can kind of do a hybrid, which is typically what I do. And that is put in a little HTML, put in some CSS, put in a little bit more HTML, put in a little bit more CSS, etc. I think personally that makes more sense. Not everybody agrees with that, which is fine. All right. Now, the other thing too, and I'm just going to mention some stuff to you as we get through this. And it's, again, not that it's that big a thing, but historically, most people don't call this folder, they don't call it styles, they call it CSS. Totally fine to call it styles. You could call it anything in the world you want. Styles isn't bad because, I mean, that's what CSS is it's a styling tool. All right, but you'll never see me on ones that I write doing that. And the same kind of way in here with images. What some people will do with images, all right, what some people will do with images is they will call this IMG or IMGS either way. All right, and I'm looking on here and they don't have the picture of the cat. So what I will do during the break today is I'm hoping you already have that picture. So let's see, I've actually got the entire thing in here. So, oops, yeah, so let's see. Uh, let's see. And there's images. Okay, so you do have that. Everybody should have that images folder, but I'm going to grab that cat and I'm going to drag it over here just so I've got a copy of it. Okay. All right. So now I've got that. Okay. Close that and close that. Come back here. Now, let's bring this thing up. So let's see. We've got now our Halloween class and our chapter 6. So I'm going to open that up. I don't think I have code open. Good. So I'm going to open that up in code. Should have done that to begin with, but that's what I'm doing now. All right. And again, you've already seen it, but if I do bring up my index.html, right mouse click and live server, you see exactly what it looks like right now. So we'll make some changes and then we'll just keep bouncing back and forth between it. Okay, so I'm going to close this. There we go. So I've got a little bit more room. In fact, I already said, let's do some work with the CSS. Okay. All right. So the first thing that's in there, and this should make sense to you right now. This line of code should make sense to all of you right now. That is saying set the background image, all right, to bats.gif, all right? And not only that, when you look at bats.gif, try that again. If I open this up, and I'm going to open it up with Paint, that's all it is. Now, it works and it looks just fine on the screen. And the reason that it does is when we bring it up, remember, right now, it's set to repeat by default. So it repeats it everywhere that it can. Everywhere that it finds some blank area, basically, it repeats it in there. All right. So then in our body, you can see we've got a font family set. We've got a width set. All right. Our background color is set. Our margin is set. There's no padding. We've got a black border around it. And we've got a box shadow. All right. So nothing we have to really do there. That all looks fine. We're also turning off the margin and turning off the padding for our H1s, our H2s, our H3s, and our P tags. Now, again, I have to take for granted, unless somebody tells me otherwise, that everything that's in there makes sense to people. All right. And I mean, I basically, I've got to go by that premise, for lack of better words. Right? So if you do have questions on anything that's in there, I mean, ask, please. All right. Now we've got our A tag, and you'll notice in here we're bolding it and we're making it orange. All right. Then we've got our visited and our link tags. So what does that mean? That means with both those tags, basically almost anything you do on there, it's going to be orange. And again, I guess they're doing because of Halloween, the Halloween effect or whatever. Finally, for hover, so when you put your mouse over a link, or when that link has the focus, it should turn green. Again, nothing new in there. All right. So let's take a look down here into the header area. And the only reason I'm doing this, I'm not trying to waste anybody's time. All right. But I do want to make sure that as we go along here, that you have an idea of what's going on. All right. Now you'll notice here these lines, and they all look the same. All right. You may or may not remember that earlier this semester, last week or the week before, I don't remember when it was, but I showed you a website called caniuse.com. All right. And what you'll find when you look at some of this stuff is it may not be supported by all browsers, or you might have limited support or whatever. The idea is eventually everything that's in here will be supported by all browsers. I mean, that's the idea. And you'll notice that in each one of these cases, this is applying that linear gradient that you see right there. All right. So what's the difference? All right. What they're saying is if you are using WebKit, all right, and I don't even remember, let's see, I don't even remember which one WebKit is for, but that's not even the point. All right. What they're saying is if this does not make sense to you, if this tag on line 33 does not make sense and you're using a WebKit browser, use the thing up above. You're putting a browser prefix on it at the beginning, minus WebKit. All right. And I believe, like I said, I believe that WebKit is the one that's used for Chrome. Moz that you see there, that's Mozilla, so that's for Firefox. O is for Opera. All right. In fact, WebKit probably covers not only Chrome, but it probably also covers Safari as well. All right. All right. There's a different one from Microsoft. I mean, I don't know if it's MS or what. I don't remember. All right. We've got some padding in there and a bottom border. Then we've got this heading image, and you'll see that that's floated left. All right. And it's got some right padding on it. All right. Then we've got a header 2 with a certain font size. And notice in here, what they're using is they're using percentages. We haven't done real much with percentages except when we talked about them in the guise of basically setting up columns. All right. But you know, anything that you do that we've done using pixels or we've done using rems or ems, you can use with percentages as well. All right. Another, remember, it's a relative measurement. All right. Then we get to our main area right here. Okay. Well, before we get to the main area, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more CSS. Now we're supposed to enter that to move that unordered list in and put it in as a sidebar. Okay, we're supposed to put it in as a sidebar. All right. Well, sidebars are typically put in as an aside, so that's what I'm going to do here. Whoops, is I'm going to type in aside. All right, and I'm going to set that up. So we want that to float to the left. You already saw that. We were told that the width on this should be 160 pixels. All right. And should add some padding. Just typically you're going to be doing this. Okay. And again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but this should make sense to you right now. You should know by looking at that, all right, by just taking a look at that, you should know then that that there'll be 20 pixels top and bottom and 0 pixels left and right. All right. Okay, so we've got that. And we're also going to put a little bit more spacing in here. Okay. And what I mean is we want a little bit of distance, for lack of better words, between all of the different unordered list entities. So I'm going to say here aside UL for the unordered list itself, and I'm going to play with the line height. So I'm going to say line height 1.5. And again, all that'll do is the amount of space that's between each entry in there will change a little bit. All right. Okay, so let's see. Now we've got a bunch of stuff in here for main, and we've got a bunch of stuff in here for footer. All right. And the stuff in here for main right now, I don't know what in here we're going to need. There might be a whole bunch of stuff. There might be very little stuff in here. All right. But let's start walking through it. Okay. Let's see. What we want to do in here, what we're told to do, is to add a section. So for now, at least, I'm going to take this whole thing right here, everything with main in it. I might go back to it or pull some pieces of it out, but I'm just going to grab all of it and comment it out just for right now, because I want to start writing some stuff for sections in here. So like I said, some of this might be duplicative from what you've seen before. It's okay. All right. But this is how I laid it out. So again, I said this will be my section area. All right. And for the section itself, I gave it a width of 580 pixels, floated it to the right, and that's important. We're already floating the aside to the left, so we're floating the section to the right. All right, because by default, when you say float left, everything floats left. We don't want that section stuff to appear underneath. All right, we don't want it to appear underneath our image. So we've got those two, and let's put some padding in here. And again, let's just put it in, put all of them in. And again, there are shortcuts for this. All right. So let's see. I'm going to, instead of I'm going to grab this, and that's going to become my section H1. Okay. And as I put this stuff in here, I'm going to remove it from here. I've already put in my own padding, so I can get rid of that one. All right. And then this will be section H1, first letter. All right. And the font size will be probably now is maybe a little bit too big. Come on. So I'm going to make it 140. And some of this, when people say, well, how'd you do how to do this? How'd you know how to do it? It's looking at something. And then for lack of words, it's just kind of starting to play with it. All right. That's really the way. Okay. So put some margin bottom on here. All right. So we've got our section first letter, our section H1, our section H1 first letter. All right. Now let's put in our section H2. And that actually looks okay the way it is. All right, so there's that. All right, and then we'll have a section H3. With a font size, and again, let's put the same margin rather than this. Let's put the same margin we had up here. All right. And then we have a section paragraph. That looks okay. Now we don't need this anymore. This margin UL or main UL rather. All right. Okay, and we've got our footer in there. I don't think I changed anything in the footer. Except we want to make sure, remember, one of the things they said was make sure to clear so that the footer doesn't appear right underneath the text. So we're going to say here, clear both, which again clears any right floating that's been done, clears any left floating that's been done. All right. Now, what you'll see if I do a file save all, it's going to look a lot different now because the stuff that was in here before, if you remember, the stuff that we had in here before was all set up in main. Well, main's gone, so this is going to look terrible probably right now. All right. It's not the way we want that to look. It's still one column, etc. So we'll have to come back in and make some changes in here. And that's what we're going to do next. All right, so move that over, just take it from the top. And again, I have no reason to not think that everybody who's watching this, whether live or on tape, everything that's right there makes sense, right? I mean, again, there are certain things that I have to, for lack of better words, suppose just make sense. All right. Okay. So we've got our header section then in here, and there's going to be our image. All right. Our pumpkin image, again, nothing new in there. Pretty much has been the same. Okay. Now we'll keep our main in there. It's not hurting anything, but what we want to do, and this is the most important part right now, is we want to grab this unordered list that we have right here, and I want to cut that, and I want to move this up to the top, and that's what's going to become our aside. Okay. So that's what we have right now is we have put in the aside, okay, with all the different stuff in there. And again, we haven't filled this stuff in yet. It's no biggie. All right. Then after that aside, what we want to do is underneath the aside, we want to put in our section. Okay. And that section is going to go down, the end of it will go down right. I want to cut it right before we finish main, like that. And the footer won't change. I've already mentioned this. If you want to change this and put in here 2023, followed by whatever your name is, do that. If you want to leave it the way it is, that's fine as well. So what have we done in here? Okay. We went in and in our main area, we we grabbed this unordered list because originally this was one column. So originally this came down here someplace. Now we're moving it up and we made it an aside. All right. Then everything else is going into the section tag. Now you don't have to do this, but I'm going to grab everything that's there and just tab it over one, right? Look a little nicer there. And again, if I view and I go back and word wrap, right, there shouldn't be anything else in here that's a surprise. At least that's my hope. There's nothing else in here that's a surprise for you. So let's see what happened after we did all this. All right. So you can see we now have the two column look. All right. And that's basically all that we had to do. Now, is there anybody watching this right now that there's something in here that doesn't make sense to you, that you need any further explanation on? The line height you can kind of see here. Okay, there's a little bit of more space than there was because the line itself with the text is on is taking up a little bit more room. All right. Eventually, I'm sure they'll probably have you remove the dots there that you could do that now. It's no biggie. But when we look at this, all right, and then we look at, where was that? There's where we were, and there's where we are. All right. So we took it from a one column site to a two column site. All right. So does anybody have any questions on this? Is there anything that I went over too fast or whatever, or it just doesn't make sense to you? All right. Then I'll tell you what.
I,
Go ahead.
good, Grant.
Go ahead, Brandon.
I'm fine.
Okay. Um. So, say, uh, when you're grading this, if I use like, because for my sidebar, I ended up making it a div class because when I was doing the aside, it was just causing it to overlap with everything. And
Okay.
so I was just Googling and going to like W3 schools, and one thing found was making it like a div class. I called it
Hmm.
like sidebar A, and then I got mine over to the left and working like that. Now are you gonna take off because I didn't do it?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, I want you to realize that, people always say, this isn't what you said, but I'm saying people always say to me, well, I didn't do mine exactly like yours, so is that okay? Or I didn't do mine like yours because that must be the key. There is no real key. I'm showing you a way of doing things. I'm not going to be brazen enough to say this is the way you should do it. And again, before the time where people were really using a lot of header, footer, section, main, etc., that everything was a div. And you'll still find there are a lot of sites that set it up like that. I'm more or less looking at the bottom line. I mean, were you able to put this into a two-column format? I mean, if I bring yours up like this and this stuff is still over here, yeah, then I'd have some concern.
Mhm.
But, if you did it with divs, that's totally fine.
Could you go back to your code real quick just
Sure.
so I can see exactly how you did it? Because I
Yeah.
was trying to look at mine at the same time,
Well,
but
let's first look here, okay? And here's the aside itself. So there it is. We told it to float left, all right? And we told it exactly the number of pixels because that's what they said in the book, and just some padding because it looked a little nicer when we did that. That's all.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
And then here was the unordered list. Again, I changed the line height. Other than that, the only thing that I did was I surrounded this with the side tags where yours again would have been a div, and that's again totally fine. And then just moved it.
Okay, yeah, whenever I did it like this way that you just did it, I was
Uh,
having a lot of issues with getting my text to float right for some reason. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I know I got it to look like that now.
okay. Well,
But yeah,
one thing too is in here. All right, where are we? Is that we did want, where's, I'm looking, there it is. The section, you had to make sure you put a float right into the section.
hmm,
And I'm not saying you did or didn't do that. I can't see your screen. But
yeah,
if you didn't, that's gonna really wreak havoc with the way that this looks.
okay, yeah. Cause this one I didn't have too many issues with. Now the shape up one, I'm pretty sure I broke something because when I tried to transition into the column, like three column, it did not go well.
Okay. Well, and with the shape up, I was only gonna show the three column one. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
Because I figured that if we did this one, people could go back and apply this to the two column one for the shape up. Right? They're not identical, but they're more similar than they are different.
Hmm.
Okay, so have I answered your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and Grant, you had one too?
Yeah, and I think you partially answered it with the making
Okay.
sure you float right on the section. I think that's what I was doing before,
Yeah,
but I
well,
was
let's
just
do this. Let's do
yeah.
this. I'm gonna take this line of code here, this float right, all right, and I'm gonna comment it out. Just that line. All right. So file save all. Let's go back to here and let's run it. All right. And you can see what's happening here is it is doing some floating here, but when it gets down to where you've got basically your past here, now it says, oh, keep floating to the left. Plus this is floating. Everything is basically set up like that. All right. Not only that, and this is, you did not ask this. All right. But if I were to come back here and also go down to the bottom and not do the clear both here. All right. Well, that actually worked. I don't know why it did, but it did. All right. So, yeah, I mean, am I answering your question, Grant?
Yeah, I think so. And I've got mine looking correct now. I think I
Okay.
get it at this
Okay.
point.
All right, let me just take those, whoops, take what I commented there and uncomment it. And again, I don't think I'm saying anything, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but once you get it done, because I've had this happen where people will say to me, I got mine, I have no idea what I did. Well, that's, I mean, and that's actually a valid thing to say. All right. Then what I'd say is start going back here and start peeling it off. In other words, take some of the lines that are in here. Here's our section. You can see the padding that was put in just for effect, right? Well, let's uncomment that, or comment that, I should say. And typically when you do that, all right, it's going to immediately show. I mean, you notice there's no padding here, and you can see how it's pushed up to the top and it's pushed over to the side, etc. All right. And I mean, when I was learning this stuff, that's how I learned it. All right, was just by sitting there and a lot of times I'll always remember I had this guy I used to work with at my first programming job. And he was one of the better programmers I'd ever seen in my life. And the funny thing is, he was a retired Army sergeant, and I had to work with him for 2 years. And pardon my French, he was a prick. All right. I mean, he always called me by my last name. And finally, one day I said, my first name's Jeff, don't you? And he said, yes, I do, Scott. And that's just how the guy was. But I said, how did you become such a good programmer? And he said, somebody a long time ago gave me this game, which was a real simplistic game. And he said, I kept looking at the code until I understood everything that was happening. Then I made a copy of it and I started making changes to the copy. All right. And I recommend you do the same thing. All right. It is 9:04. Let's come back at 9:15. We'll pick it up there. And when we do, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the same thing, but with the shape up. Okay, so I will see you then at 9:15. Right back. All right, it is 9:15, so I'm going to start back up. One thing that I'm going to do right when I finish today is I just copied this. I know that a bunch of you had said you didn't have those links that were in here for the different things, so I'm going to send those to you today. I'll send those in just a couple minutes. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through very similar to what we just did, but we're going to do this for the shape up, and we're going to do the 3-column. So when you take a quick look on here, what you were supposed to do with shape up is first you were supposed to do the 2-column. Well, again, I'm taking for granted that now you're going to be able to do that. Just apply what we just did for the Halloween because it's pretty much the same thing. All right. But now, like I said, we want to do the 3-column. And I'm going to do this the opposite. So in other words, last time we did the CSS and then we went in and changed the HTML. So now I'm going to go in and change the HTML and then we'll change the CSS. So this is the first part of that assignment, but the one we're going to concentrate is this. So basically where it differs here is we're going to have 2 asides. All right, 2 different sidebars, sidebar 1 and sidebar 2, or A and B, or whatever you want to call them. It doesn't really matter. All right. And again, when we get to the point where we're talking about Flexbox, it's even easier than what they show here. All right. And again, nobody's asked this, and I brought up stuff like this before, but sometimes people will come back and go, well, if it's so much easier with Flexbox, why do we have to look at this? Why do we have to learn it this way? It's because there's still millions of lines of code out there that were done in older ways. All right. There's a lot of legacy websites that have been out there forever. People don't want to change them because they're afraid that they're going to break. All right. Yeah, maybe you could make them better, but they don't care. They just care about having it be up and running, I guess. So let's take a look here. So we want this 3-column format. There's all of our requirements. So to create this, you can copy the index HTML that you just did and rename it. Yeah, then you can do the same thing with the CSS file. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. All right. Modify the link element. Of course, we have to do that because we're going to be using a different style sheet. Move the existing sidebar before the section and assign its ID to this sidebar. All right, then modify the CSS. All right, so that it refers to the sidebar by this ID. So in other words, the one right here is the one they're talking about here. All right. Add another sidebar after this section and add the content shown above to this sidebar. That's right here. Okay. It says you'll find this content in the prepare.txt in the text folder. Be sure to assign an ID to this sidebar so that you can refer to the sidebar in the CSS. Then format the sidebar as above. Increase the page width to 1200 pixels. Set the widths and the spacing for the section and the 2 sidebars and floating for the new sidebar so that the page appears as above. All right. So just like, again, nothing up my sleeve, just like before. In fact, let me close this so you can see everything here. So let me exit from here. All right. So what we have right here, right now, is for shape up this chapter 5 thing. So again, I'm going to take it, copy it, and make a CH06. Right? And then I'm going to open that up with Paint. No, with Paint, with code. All right. And again, like I said, what we'll do this time, just to change it up a little bit, is we'll do the HTML first. All right. So taking it from the top here. Yeah, that looks good. That all looks good. Looking here, nothing in the head section changes to my knowledge. I don't think anything in the header section changes to my knowledge. oh, here we're gonna have to change this. Okay. So this will be styles main. I think they said to call it something like main 3 column .css. Okay, so we'll have to make sure that we also change, if it isn't changed already, we have to change, or I guess change around the name of the CSS file as well. In fact, so I don't forget, I'm going to do that right now. Because in here right now, I've got main.css and I want to change it to this. Okay, so let's do a view word wrap so we can see everything. Okay, so I'm going to right mouse click on here and rename this. And I want it to be main underscore 3 underscore column dot CSS. Okay. All right. So we've done that. That was the first thing we were told to do. Just to be sure, let me run it, make sure it doesn't look terrible or it gets thrown all over the place or whatever. Yep. Okay. So that looks okay. All right. And we're starting it from here. So we literally want, remember, we want 2 different sidebars here. What I mean is this thing, this additional resources, I believe, is the first one that we're going to move. There it is. All right. And then we're going to add this from that prepare text stuff. So we've gone through here. Okay. I copied it. I modified the name. Okay. So that's a start. So we've got to do these last 3 things that are shown on here. All right. So first thing I want to do after my header is down in my main section here. Okay. Well, rather than even having a section, what we're going to do is we're going to put in a side right there, and then we're going to copy it over from where it currently is. You can call this whatever you want, but I'm going to make an aside, and then ID equals, again, you can call it sidebar 1, sidebar A, whatever. You should call it something that at least makes sense to you. All right. So let me go in and let me hit enter here. And now I'm going to find that thing down at the bottom, the additional resources. Oh, it already was in there as an aside. Okay. So I'll tell you what, let's just do that. I'm going to copy, grab all of it, every bit of it that's down here, and I'm all going to cut it. And let's move it up to the top here. Okay, and I'll put it right here. It's going to look funky for a second, but it'll get fixed in just a second. All right. So I don't need this sideline anymore. I've got a side that equals A. All right. Okay, so that was the first thing. So again, looking at my steps that are in here. Move the existing sidebar so that it's before the HTML and assign an ID to this, then modify the CSS so it refers to the sidebar by this ID. We'll do that in just a minute. All right, so we've got that first sidebar in here right now. Let me do a file and do a save, just see if it's going to modify the way that looks at all. All right, so that's all done. Okay, and I don't know, I guess we had 2 asides there, so let me get rid of that one. All right, so now we've got our section. Get ready to shape up, all that other good stuff that's in there. All right. And then notice we have to go in here now, and we have to add that prepare.text stuff. So let me get ready for it by coming in here and putting in another aside. And I'm going to say ID equals, and we'll call this, I think we call the first one sidebar A. Sidebar A. So we'll call this one sidebar B. And enter. Oops, didn't close it. And enter. All right, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to jump back into here where I've got all the stuff for the whole semester. And again, wherever that was, there it is, spring. again, this is the same thing that I gave to you guys, so. Let's see. I think it was under text. It's called like prepare text. All right, so let me open that. There that is, how to shape up, etc. I think that's the one we're supposed to add. So I'm going to just copy all that text. And I'm going to put it in here. Okay. Slide over. Come on. All right. Well, we'll just do a file, save all. All right. And it'll put it the way it puts it. Now, the CSS hasn't been applied yet, but let's see what we do have. Okay. We've got this, and that is over pretty much the way that it should be, but everything else, it's still one column. All right. So all we've done so far is we have moved this by putting it at the top. We've got this underneath, and we just added this right here, which looks pretty ugly, but we'll fix it up in just a moment. Any questions on anything we've done so far?
Could you show your code for the second aside?
Sure.
I put in that text and I thought the same way, but mine's not showing up on my
Okay.
my preview yet.
Okay. Well, here was the first one. Just all I did was move the aside and give it an ID. All right. This was the section stuff. Once you finish the section, so make sure you're outside of the section, I just added my second aside right there. Okay, then I just went over to the file prepare.txt, copied it in, and then ended my aside.
Okay.
I mean, is there any other question? Is there anything I'm doing that you don't understand?
No, it's not that. Mine looks, the HTML looks the same, but when I go into the live server, it ends right after the eat what's right for you text. So maybe once it starts
So
formatting,
it ends right here?
Yeah.
Did you
Right.
save before? Did you save it before you went into live server?
Yes.
Huh. Well, if
Maybe
nothing else,
I float that right.
send it to me. Otherwise, be happy to
Okay.
look at it if you can't get it to work.
All right. Thank you.
Professor.
Okay. Yes.
Excuse me. Why would my header be disappearing as we add this stuff in? Like, it's totally not on my page anymore, but it's in my code.
What header are you talking about?
Like the shape up with the
The thing at the
logo.
top?
Yeah, it's just gone now. After I added
So
the
this
second
this
stuff.
is gone?
Yep, the whole header is just disappeared. All the gradient work and stuff I did, it's just gone. It's like it's being force shoved up or something. I'm not sure.
Well, again, kind of feel free to send it to me, but it's very hard to tell, you know what I mean?
I gotcha.
So, but I'll be more than happy to look at it because we're only going to go until about 10, and then we'll be finished today. And I'm giving people the rest of the time to try to, fix theirs if they had problems with it. So,
I'm just gonna keep following along, and maybe
okay.
as we keep going, it fixes everything.
All righty. All right. So I'm going to do here a file save. And now I want to bring up my CSS. So this is that main 3-column thing, or not, I guess it's, yeah, main 3-column.css. Let's see. We're supposed to change the width from 900 to 1200. We were told to do that in our specs. I don't see anything else in here that we have to change. All right, our H1, H2, H3, and pad and P. All right, we're turning off the padding in the margin. That's fine. We want all of our hyperlinks to be bolded. That's fine. Our header, I don't think I had to change anything in here. No, it's just the gradient stuff. Yeah, I think that's all fine the way it is. The image we're floating to the left. All right. H2. Again, I'm looking to see what I changed because there's more that wasn't changed than was. Metallic steel blue 45. Nothing in there in the H2. Nothing in the H3 was changed. All right. Now it'll start to change. The styles for the section, etc. will start changing right now. Okay. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I just want to get rid of this padding that's in here right now. I'm going to put in my own stuff. All right. Now you maybe notice this. You always get this error if you put in something and you don't have any CSS inside of it. So with 550 pixels, float left, and some and some padding. All right. The H1 looks fine the way that it is. The H2 looks fine. So I'm going to move this up. I'm hoping that everybody who needs this that I've changed, I'm hoping you've had time to go and key that in so I can go down to the section H3 because that's right now it's not visible on the page. All right, oops, maroon 1/10, that looks okay. The paragraph, that looks okay. The link, that looks okay. The hover and the focus, that looks okay. All right, now we have to do this stuff. Remember that right now, this is going to change dramatically because we were at just one aside. We now have two, and the asides we have been renamed. All right. I may be able to use some of this. I may not. I don't know. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get rid of all of it. All right. So I'm going to have to do a little bit extra typing on my own, and that's okay. Let me check real quick at the bottom here. I don't think that the footer changed at all, except I know I have to do a clear. Yeah, that's totally fine. So the only other thing I want to put in the footer here is do a clear both. All right. So that was in the main footer. And now I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to write the styles. I'm going to say just change my comment. And I'm going to say here, the styles for sidebar A, and then copy that. And the ones for sidebar B. I think I've got different stuff for H1. I don't know. Yeah, I believe I do. All right. So I'm going to start, and if you don't like that, you could say the left sidebar and the right sidebar, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. So for sidebar A here. Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to float it to the left. And again, the next thing, and much of this is just looking at it, playing with it, etc. But I gave it a width of 240 pixels and then some padding. All right. So that's the main stuff. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to move it up. There we go. All right. And then we've got the H2. This is where I probably could have used some of the stuff that was in here before, but it's okay. All right, so I'm taking for granted everybody's had time to put in this one. And so I can move this up. All right. So there was the H2. And from my unordered list, just like we did last time, we're going to bump up the line height. And we don't want there to be any margin. All right. And then we have to do our links, and then we'll take a look at it. Now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it right below it because I'm doing almost the same thing. But now they're not going to be the link and the visit, they're going to be the hover and the focus. All right, and they won't be steel blue, they'll be maroon. Now I'm going to come right back to it, but let me save this. Okay, let's come over to here. All right, so we moved that. That's now maroon. Now that's maroon too. All right, and this looks terrible right now. That's okay. That's just our sidebar B. But we're going to fix that in just a moment. So let me get back to here. There. And like I said, as you're doing this stuff, because I'm kind of giving you the whole picture, all right, what you might want to do is make a copy once you got it all working, work with a copy and just start taking some of the stuff that's in there and commenting it out. All right, so let's do the other sidebar. So again, I think I put the comment, there it is, for sidebar B. Now the other one I think was 240 and this one is like 290, but it'll also float. This one float right. Now, just by making those changes, you saw how kind of pitiful that looked just a minute ago, but now let's see. Didn't do too much, did it? Okay. But so far, this is what we've done. All right. And just like we were doing before, so now I'm going to do the H2. And I didn't even see an H2 on mine, so maybe when I copied, I didn't copy everything over, which is totally possible. Oops. And then just one more here, and that is for the paragraph. Now, before we unveil it, so to speak, let me jump back to here. And this was supposed to have how to prepare to shape up. All right, I don't think I have that right now, so I think that I left that down on the bottom here. So. Get ready to shape up. How to prepare to shape up. Okay, I don't know how, but I think that was supposed to be like an H2. I don't know why it's not, but it's not. In fact, this isn't formatted at all when you look at it here. All right, I think that's why it looks as bad as it does right now. So let me go and do some formatting on here. And I'm doing it based off of a picture. I should have done this first. Sorry about that. So how to prepare to shape up. That's my H2. Then we have an H3, and that's the get a checkup. All right. Oops. Right. Then we have some paragraphs. That's all that's left now. Okay. And I lied, not purposely, but that's also an H3. Rest for success.
How are you telling that they're H3s? I thought they were H2s.
Oh, it's you typically only have one H1 on a page. All right. That's historically, that's the way people set this up. So the only reason I'm saying that is because how did I know? I just eyeballed it, and that's what it looked like to me. I would never ever take off for something like that.
Okay.
You know, the way I look at something and the way you look at something could be totally different, and that's just fine with me. All right. So let's see this success thing. Oh, that's dress for success. And that last one is wherever that is, resist temptation, I think it says. Right there. Let me do a file save. I'll pretty it up a little bit. So sorry about that. So we've got here how to prepare to shape up was an H2, get a checkup, and then the paragraph, dress for success, and then the paragraph, equipment, and then the paragraph, resist temptation, and then the paragraph. I think everything that's here is done. And if you need me to in just a second, I'll come back to it. And there we go. Now, probably should push that a little down a little bit. I think it would look better if we did. We could, there's different things we could do to pretty it up. I don't know. Does it look like the picture? I don't even know. I did these last summer, so I can't really tell you. So, and that should be maroon and it's not, so we can fix that too. But it looks like these two should line up, and I don't think right now they are. So this should be pushed down is what I'm saying right here. All right. So we could pretty that up. And again, that should be maroon, and it's not maroon. And there's different ways. So let's look at those ways real quick. I don't think they were shown in here. I don't think I'm missing anything. But that H2 for sidebar B, all right, it does say color maroon, and it didn't look like it was maroon. And it almost looks like there should be some margin top on there. Now, sometimes when I do this, because I'm doing this myself, so I could screw it up. No, that didn't really push it down at all. I'd have to take a look at that. But let's go back. We've got the 3 columns. That's the good news. All right. So let's go back and take a look at the CSS, and then we'll take one last look at the HTML. All right. So the CSS that got added in here at the top, we changed the width to 1200 pixels. Nothing else changed in the body. Nothing changed here or here or here. Nothing changed until we got down basically to the sidebars. All right. The first sidebar was floated left and given a width and some padding. The H2 in that sidebar, as you can see, was given a font size and a color of it and a margin bottom. The unordered list in there was given some line height and margin, and the colors were changed, or I guess set up correctly, so that when you are if the link has not been clicked on yet, or it has, it'll be steel blue. If you take your mouse and put it over it, it should be maroon, or if it gets the focus. All right, over here then, this was for sidebar B. Again, we floated it right, set up a width and some padding. All right, I have our font size set up. That color doesn't appear to be working, and I have no idea why it wouldn't work. There's nothing wrong with that line that's in there. There is a semicolon, or a colon rather, a semicolon before it. So margin top didn't do diddly. So I'd have to go look at that to see exactly what we had to change. All right, so we've got that. Got our H3 in our paragraph. And then finally, we came back here and first thing we did was up here, this aside previously just said aside ID equals just aside. We gave it the ID because there was only one aside previously. So there really was no reason to do this. I should tell you too, by now, hopefully, you're all getting in vogue as far as the difference between using, for example, an ID in a class. So there should only be one sidebar A on this page. All right, if there were going to be several, I would have made that a class. There are developers who never use IDs. They use classes for everything they do. All right, and one of the reasons that they do that, is then later, if they want to add something, they never have to worry about whether or not it appeared on the page before or not. All right. Now, I'm just going to mention this to you, and don't worry, I'm gonna literally type something in here. I'm going to get rid of it right away. But when we get into the part of the class when we're working with JavaScript, we'll be using something like this: document dot get element by ID. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is that's going to allow us to get any ID that's on the page. All right. There's also a get element by class name that's going to work very similarly, but that's going to allow us to be able to manipulate programmatically this stuff. Why would we want to do that? Well, for instance, let's just pretend for a second that we were showing something and if it was day, we wanted to have one color, and if it was night, we wanted to have another color. That's kind of a dumb example, but it just came to mind. We could literally have JavaScript check the time for us, and we could use one color if it was morning and another color if it was evening or something like that. All right, so here was our first sidebar, and again, that was just this list. Okay, and like I said, I will send those to you. So that was everything that was in there. All right, then we've got our section. That didn't change at all. All right, and then we've got our other sidebar. Ah, take a look. I wonder if this is why that didn't work. That should be a little b. All right, so let's look now that I actually spelled it correctly. This is case sensitive. There, looks the way it should look. All right, so that one little thing, and that's a weird thing because it wouldn't have given me an error. Now, probably when I validated it, it probably would have. All right. I was wondering why isn't, because it just looked bad compared to the other one. And that was it. Okay. And of course, you don't have to do this, but I can go back now. You weren't asked to do this, I don't think, for the exercise. But I can go to the validator. And these are all, I mean, some of this stuff, basically, you could say that we're kind of breaking. Okay, it says the slash has no effect, so we really didn't need one there. So I could remove those on all those link tags. All right. So in other words, if I come back here, all these, but I can remove them, but what's going to happen is the editor is going to put them back in again. All right. Okay. So that was the first thing. And then let's quickly look at validating the CSS. And no errors found. Okay. Does anyone need me to show you anything else that's on here?
I don't think so. This cleared up the floating on the columns for
Yeah,
me a
and
lot.
if that happens, like I said, a couple people emailed me. Just feel free to email me during the week. I mean, I know I've been bashed by other instructors before. They're like, well, you should make them do it. Yeah, but I don't want to see somebody. These assignments ideally will take you maybe a half an hour, each one of these. But if you're working on it for 3 or 4 hours, something's wrong. And typically, what's wrong is I didn't do a good enough job to you. So don't ever hesitate to ask. All right, please. So other than that, that's what I had for today. So tomorrow, like I said, please make sure you read chapter 9 on Flexbox. We will go over the chapter, then we will go over, as they say, a plethora of examples. All right. And with the problems that you guys each had before, if you still have them, feel free to email me what you have. All right, I'll be happy to take a look at it. And then finally, as I said, I am going to be sending you, not this in just a second. In fact, I'm gonna grab this and I'm gonna put it onto the email I always send at the end of the period. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 8:05. Have a good
Professor,
day. Yes. Go ahead.
so my email I sent you yesterday with the my Git bash not working.
Yeah.
I worked on it and worked on it. I tried what you recommended. I have not been able to get it to um it's like won't even accept, that first step where you do the global user
Uh-huh.
in your name. It's not accepting
Well,
anything
I
like
I
that.
understand it, and I thought of something afterwards. Let me ask you this. It may sound very fundamental, but did you install Git on your new machine?
I did, yes.
Okay. I mean, that was the first thing I wanted to know because I thought of that later. Well, gee, if you didn't have Git on there, it probably wouldn't recognize anything. But it doesn't recognize those global commands?
Yeah, here I will let me pull it up real quick. Um Also, one thing that could be a problem is getting that uh, line from GitHub for the repository. Do you know if it's possible to get that again or pull that page back up with it?
Um, is it possible? Probably. I don't know what it is. What I always do is this. I literally go into GitHub, I create a dummy repository, okay? And I copy the remote line, and then if I call it like dummy.git, I change dummy to the name of the actual repo.
I see. That's okay. I will try that
Okay.
then.
All right. Well, let me know if it doesn't work, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.